latest breaking news today. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, in USA announced changes to its guidance on masks, calling on vaccinated people to wear them indoors in certain situations, including in all schools. The news comes roughly 2 months after the CDC relaxed its recommendations for some indoor mask wearing, but as the Delta variant adds new complications to the COVID-19 pandemic. The CDC recommends fully vaccinated people wear masks in public, indoor settings to help prevent the spread of the Delta variant and protect others, CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky said Tuesday. This includes schools. CDC recommends that everyone in schools wear a mask indoors, including teachers, staff, students, and visitors, regardless of vaccination status. Children should return to full-time, in-person learning in the fall with proper prevention strategies in place. She added the CDC is recommending that community leaders encourage vaccination and universal masking to prevent further outbreaks in areas of substantial and high transmission. COVID-19 continues to present many challenges and has exacted a tremendous toll on our nation, she said. We continue to follow the science closely and update guidance should the science shift again. We must take every step we can to stop the Delta variant and end this pandemic.
South Korea on Wednesday reported 1,896 new COVID-19 cases for Tuesday, its highest ever daily increase, as the country struggles to subdue a fourth wave of outbreaks fanned by the more contagious Delta variant of the coronavirus. The daily tally broke a previous record set on July 22 as infections are spreading beyond the capital Seoul and its neighboring regions where the toughest social distancing rules are in place. There were 1,823 domestically transmitted cases on Tuesday, and 33.5%, or 611, of them were from areas outside the capital regions, according to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency. This is the first time the number of cases outside the Seoul metropolitan region has exceeded the 600 mark since the first COVID-19 wave emerged from a church in the southeastern city of Daegu. Tighter social distancing curbs took effect across most of the country on Tuesday and will last for 2 weeks. Those areas will be under Level 3 curbs on a 4-level scale, which will mean a 10 p.m. dining curfew and ban on gatherings of more than 4 people. The tighter curbs were enacted to prevent the further spread of the coronavirus during South Korea's peak summer holiday season. The Great Seoul Area region remains under Level 4 curbs that include a ban on gatherings of more than 2 people after 6 p.m.
In Kuala Lumpur, AirAsia Group Berhad saw all its 4 key operating entities post significant improvement for the second quarter of this year amid a low base effect as the group's fleet were hibernated for the most part of the quarter 2 impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. In a statement issued yesterday, the low-cost carrier said AirAsia Malaysia carried 64% higher number of passengers year-on-year on 54% higher capacity, resulting in a 4 percentage point increase to a healthy load factor of 64%. This is despite AirAsia Malaysia's operations remaining constrained quarter-on-quarter due to a lockdown and interstate travel restrictions imposed from January this year. Meanwhile, AirAsia Philippines posted a 2% increase in number of passengers carried and 4 percentage points increase in load factor to reach 78%. However, it said the monthly breakdown showed that load factor was as high as 83% in June 2021, driven by active capacity management. Although AirAsia Indonesia's number of passengers showed a mere 1% dip, its load factor grew by 11 percentage points to 67% in quarter 2 due to more stringent capacity management. AirAsia Indonesia was operating approximately 70% of pre-pandemic domestic capacity in May 2021 and demonstrated strong signs of recovery before it had to enter hibernation mode in early July in support of the containment efforts by the government as infection cases increased, said AirAsia. On the other hand, AirAsia Thailand more than doubled the number of passengers carried year-on-year and reported a 9 percentage point increase in load factor to 61% in quarter 2 2021, driven by higher demand during the Songkran festival in April 2021 and low base effect in the corresponding period last year. However, AirAsia Thailand's recovery was short-lived due to the new wave of COVID-19 that started in mid-April this year. Moving forward, AirAsia remains committed to strengthen its domestic foothold while awaiting positive developments on international air travel.
An explosion in a chemical park in Germany led to the death of one person and has injured at least 16 people, the site operator said. The blast happened around 9:40 a.m. local time, 0740 GMT, on Tuesday, Chempark operator Currenta reported. The reason behind the blast is still unknown. Firefighters, search and rescue crews, and police officers were rushed to the scene of the blast immediately. In addition to this, pollution detection experts were also called to assess if the smoke coming from the blast site could pose a deadly effect on locals of the area. As soon as the blast happened, authorities urged locals to stay indoors as thick black smoke started rising in the area. Locals were also asked to keep emergency numbers free as much as possible to make sure those in need are able to reach out to the authorities. Out of the 16, 2 injured people are reported to be in serious condition and 4 others have been reported missing by local authorities. The incident took place at Chempark's landfill and waste incineration area in Leverkusen's Buerik district. Authorities have assured that all resources are being used to ensure rescue efforts continue at full speed. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged citizens to remain cautious as daily coronavirus cases fell for the 7th day in a row. The Johnson government had lifted coronavirus restrictions on July 19 as data showed the virus had fallen 50% over the past week from 46,558 to 23,511 on Tuesday. Johnson urged people to get vaccinated and to limit contacts to combat the virus as UK's death toll rose to 129,303 with 131 people dying in the last 28 days, which was the highest since March. Hospitalizations have increased steadily, rising to 5,918 with COVID-19 cases rising earlier this month. Experts had earlier warned COVID-19 cases would reach 100,000 a day in the days after major restrictions were lifted, even as vaccination numbers in Britain continue to rise with at least 70% of adults receiving both jabs. Former U.S. President Donald Trump supporters who stormed the U.S. Capitol building had clear plans to carry out coordinated attacks and disrupt democracy, senior Democrat Benny Thompson said on Tuesday after starting the congressional inquiry into the January 6 riots. An inquiry was opened on Tuesday to investigate the attack of Trump supporters at the Capitol Police and Capitol building on January 6. Armed with video and picture evidence, Thompson claimed the Capitol riot was the most violent attack since the British assailed the U.S. legislature in 1814. On the first day of the hearing, the lawmakers will be hearing first-hand accounts of the Capitol police officers who were attacked mercilessly by the rioters, while hoping to find leaders such as Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence. 4 police officers, including Michael Fanone, who was stun-gunned and brutally beaten by protesters, are scheduled to testify at the hearing today. One of the officers described this attack like a medieval battle and claimed he feared he would die. The hearing chair said it is very clear that the Capitol attack was coordinated to derail the peaceful transfer of power. The attack took place on the same day when the certification process of Joe Biden's November presidential election victory was taking place in the Capitol building.
The U.S. State Department warned citizens against traveling to Spain, Portugal, Cyprus and Kyrgyzstan amid rise in Delta variant cases. The U.S. administration has restricted travel for citizens belonging to the European Union, Britain and China, and added other countries where the virus cases have increased. However, the EU last month had reopened its borders for travelers from the U.S., allowing proof of vaccination or negative tests to enter, as President Biden said he would look into the issue of reciprocity. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, had raised travel advisory to level 4, very high for Spain, Cyprus, Kyrgyzstan and Portugal, even as the State Department issued do not travel advisories. We will maintain existing travel restrictions at this point, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, adding, the more transmissible Delta variant is spreading both here and around the world. Portugal has been witnessing a surge in coronavirus cases, with capital Lisbon and the southern Algarve tourist region being the hardest hit, with intensive care patients rising as authorities move to close restaurants and bars. However, recent reports said COVID-19 cases have been ebbing after the government had designated at least 60 municipalities as high-risk zones, with the Delta variant spreading rapidly. Authorities had imposed night curfew in Lisbon, including in Porto and Albufeira, and made work from home compulsory. The country had reported new COVID-19 cases among younger and unvaccinated adults. Spain had witnessed a similar trend amid rising Delta variant cases as the infection rose to 4.3 million, with the northeastern region of Catalonia being the hardest hit as night curfew was imposed to curb the spread of the virus. Germany had designated Spain as an area with a high incidence of coronavirus, requiring unvaccinated travelers to quarantine for at least 5 days. Singapore first integrated social and business platform is here. Chat online marketplace. Everyone is chatting in chat. Connect with new friends around the world. Sharing opportunities and moments. Know what happened around the world. No more prank calls or targeted advertisements. Your personal data privacy is protected against remarketing. Download Chat Online Marketplace now. Singapore first integrated social and business platform. Available in Apple stores and Play Store. An explosion in a chemical park in Germany led to the death of one person and has injured at least 16 people, the site operator said. The blast happened around 9:40 a.m. local time, 0740 GMT, on Tuesday, Chempark operator Currenta reported. The reason behind the blast is still unknown. Firefighters, search and rescue crews, and police officers were rushed to the scene of the blast immediately. In addition to this, pollution detection experts were also called to assess if the smoke coming from the blast site could pose a deadly effect on locals of the area. As soon as the blast happened, authorities urged locals to stay indoors as thick black smoke started rising in the area. The NINA warning app sent an alert to locals of the area and asked them to close their doors and windows. Locals were also asked to keep emergency numbers free as much as possible to make sure those in need are able to reach out to the authorities. Out of the 16, 2 injured people are reported to be in serious condition and 4 others have been reported missing by local authorities. The incident took place at Chempark's landfill and waste incineration area in Leverkusen's Buerig district. Authorities have assured that all resources are being used to ensure rescue efforts continue at full speed. We are deeply saddened by this tragic accident and the death of an employee, Currenta said in a statement.
As coronavirus pandemic surges on with new variants, the United Nations has urged countries to reopen all schools that had been closed due to the COVID pandemic. This cannot go on, said James Elder, spokesman for the UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, adding that closing of schools in pandemic has led to putting the education of more than 600 children at stake. Talking about how some countries have reopened bars and restaurants, Elder said it is a terrible mistake that the countries have still not opened schools. Reopening schools cannot wait for all teachers and students to be vaccinated, he said, adding that the government should be working on saving their education budgets even when the economy is suffering hardship due to the pandemic. Even though he acknowledged that governments all over the world have had to make tough choices in the pandemic, he said schools should be the last institute to be closed and first to be reopened. Myanmar's Union Election Commission has cancelled the results of the multi-party general elections held on November 8 last year, state media reported, quoting the commission's announcement on Monday. The results were cancelled as the elections were unfair and not held in line with the laws, the commission said, adding that it had found voting fraud after it inspected voter lists and the casting of votes. The leaders of North and South Korea have agreed to resume suspended communication lines and enhance ties, according to South Korea. President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un achieved such an agreement, according to the presidential office in Seoul, following multiple rounds of letter exchanges since April. Last month marked 1 year since the cross-border communication lines were suspended. On June 16 last year, the North vowed to cut off all contact links with the South and even blew up an inter-Korean liaison office in its border city of Kaesong in outrage over anti-Pyongyang propaganda pamphlets coming from the South. In response to activist defectors who have gone to the South and often launch balloons back over the border with propaganda pamphlets, North Korea had stated it was stopping relations at the time. Communications lines between the Koreas have been cut and restored during previous periods of tension. Last month, a South Korean ministry official said that the inter-Korean communication channel must be immediately restored without any conditions. We urge North Korea to restore the inter-Korean communication lines. The inter-Korean communication channel is the most fundamental means of communication, and the two Koreas have agreed to maintain such a channel several times. The Korean conflict has lasted more than 70 years, making it one of the world's longest. Despite the increased tensions, there was no way for the North and the South to communicate. The first hotline between the two Koreas was installed at Panmunjom on September 22, 1971, 26 years after the former Soviet Army shut off the telephone line between Seoul and Haeju shortly after liberation on August 26, 1945. A total of 50 lines have been opened since 1971, including a hotline between the two Koreas' presidents, as well as military and intelligence contact lines.
WeChat is suspending all new user registrations until early August. The popular social messaging app announced on Tuesday. In a brief post on social media, WeChat, known as Wixin in China, said the suspension relates to an upgrade of security technology according to relevant laws and regulations. China is cracking down on data privacy. That's terrible news for some of its biggest tech companies. In the meantime, the registration of new WeChat personal accounts and public accounts will be temporarily suspended. The app, which is owned by Chinese tech giant Tencent, added, new registrations will resume after the upgrade is completed, which is expected in early August, the company said. Wixin is a daily necessity for hundreds of millions of people in China, who use the app to message friends, share photos, hail rides, pay for stuff, book restaurants, order food and a host of other services. Together, Wixin and WeChat, used by the Chinese diaspora including in the United States, have around 1.2 billion monthly active users. It was not immediately clear which laws WeChat was referring to in its announcement, but the development comes amid a widening crackdown on technology and now education companies by Chinese regulators that has spooked investors. Tencent's stock in Hong Kong closed down nearly 9% on Tuesday, its worst day in a decade. Several tech companies, including e-commerce giant Alibaba, have faced investigations for alleged monopolistic behavior or breaches of customer rights, leading to record fines and massive overhauls. Chinese President Xi Jinping has endorsed the probes, calling on regulators to scrutinize tech companies as the country tightens data privacy and security policies. At least 180 people have died in the West Indian state of Maharashtra after torrential monsoon rains caused landslides and flooded low-lying areas, cutting off hundreds of villages. At least 38 people were killed in Talier, 180 kilometers southeast of the financial capital Mumbai, when a landslide flattened most of the small village, state government officials said. The death toll also includes 27 reported deaths from Satara district in the last 48 hours, a representative from the state's Disaster Management, Relief and Rehabilitation Department. In 9 other landslides in other parts of Maharashtra, 59 people died and another 15 were killed in accidents linked to the heavy rainfall, state government officials said. Another 84 deaths are from the coastal district of Raigad, according to an official with the National Disaster Response Force on Monday. The toll rose after 31 people who were reported missing after Thursday's landslide have been confirmed dead. Since Thursday, Maharashtra, along with the neighboring states of Goa, Karnataka, and Telangana, has faced heavy rainfall. In Maharashtra, the Radhanagari Dam overflowed and the Panchganga River saw water levels rise, submerging low-lying areas nearby. Rescue operations are continuing in those interior districts, toward the state's south and along the border with Karnataka. In Maharashtra, more than 200,000 people have been evacuated, according to the state's Department of Relief and Rehabilitation. The India Meteorological Department on Friday issued a red alert for 6 districts of Maharashtra, forecasting extremely heavy rainfall and recommending preventive actions. The official said that districts Kolhapur and Sangli are still on alert. Parts of India's west coast received up to 594 mm, 23 inches, of rainfall over 24 hours, forcing authorities to evacuate people from vulnerable areas as they released water from dams that were threatening to overflow. On Friday, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced compensation of $2,686 for the families of victims, and $671 to those injured. Thousands of trucks were stuck on a national highway linking Mumbai with the southern technology hub of Bengaluru, with the road submerged in some places, another Maharashtra government official said. Meanwhile, hundreds of villages and towns were without electricity and drinking water, he said. Rivers were also overflowing in the neighboring southern states of Karnataka and Telangana, where authorities were monitoring the situation, government officials there said. Russia has given the green light for clinical trials combining a British shot from AstraZeneca and Oxford University with Russia's Sputnik V vaccine to go ahead, according to Russia's state drug register. The Health Ministry's Ethical Committee had in May suspended the approval process for the clinical trials, and requested additional information. According to the state drug register, 5 Russian clinics will hold trials that are set to finish in early March 2022. Both the Oxford University AstraZeneca and Sputnik V vaccines involve 2 doses, an initial shot and a booster, but Sputnik V uses different viral vectors for its 2 shots. Russian Direct Investment Fund, RDIF, which promotes the use of the Sputnik V vaccine, has welcomed the decision to go ahead with the trials. Currently, RDIF is conducting joint clinical trials to combine the first component of Sputnik V, the Sputnik Light vaccine, with vaccines from other foreign manufacturers, it said in a statement. In particular, the Sputnik Light vaccine can be used in combination with other vaccine to increase their effectiveness, including against new variants appearing as a result of the mutation of the virus. So-called viral vector shots use harmless modified viruses as vehicles, or vectors, to carry genetic information that helps the body build immunity against future infections. Human trials of a COVID-19 vaccine combining the Oxford University AstraZeneca shot with Sputnik V had already been approved in Azerbaijan, the United Arab Emirates, Belarus, and Argentina. Three Hong Kong judges are expected to deliver a verdict on Tuesday in the trial of the first person charged under the national security law, a landmark case with implications on how the legislation reshapes the city's common law traditions. Former waiter Tong Ying Kit, 24, has pleaded not guilty to charges of terrorism and inciting secession, as well as an alternative charge of dangerous driving causing grievous bodily harm. The acts he is accused of occurred on July 1, 2020, shortly after the law was enacted. Tong is accused of driving his motorcycle into 3 riot police while carrying a flag with the protest slogan "Liberate Hong Kong, Revolution of Our Times," which prosecutors say is secessionist. The main charges could lead to a prison term of several years to life, while the alternative charge could be punished by up to 7 years in prison. His trial was presided over by judges Esther To, Anthea Pang, and Wilson Chan, picked by city leader Carrie Lam to hear national security cases. Their verdict is expected at 3 p.m. local time, 0700 GMT. Tong's case is seen by pro-democracy activists and human rights groups as a departure from Hong Kong's common law traditions, as he was denied bail in a jury trial. It is also a test of the limits of free speech in the former British colony, as the prosecution and defense argued over the meaning of the slogan, which was ubiquitous during Hong Kong's mass 2019 protests. The governments in Beijing and Hong Kong have said repeatedly the security law was necessary to bring stability after the often violent 2019 protests and that the rights and freedoms promised to the city upon its return to Chinese rule in 1997 remain intact. The law, imposed by Beijing in June 2020, punishes what China sees as subversion, secession, terrorism and collusion with foreign forces.
President Joe Biden opened talks with Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi on Monday, saying relations were in a new phase that would include the end of U.S. combat operations in the country. With Kadhimi at his side in the White House, Biden said that the U.S. is committed to our security cooperation and will continue to train, to assist, to help, to deal with ISIS as it arises. But we're not going to be, at the end of the year, in a combat mission, he said. Biden also stressed U.S. support for elections in October in Iraq, saying Washington is working closely with Baghdad, the Gulf Cooperation Council, and the United Nations to ensure the elections are fair. Kadhimi said the U.S. and Iraq have a strategic partnership. America, they help Iraq. Together we fight and defeat ISIS, he said. Today, our relation is stronger than ever, our partnership in the economy, the environment, health, education, culture and more. Biden is currently also overseeing the United States' withdrawal from Afghanistan after 20 years of war, with the Taliban on the offensive amid fears they could even topple the Kabul government.
Nicole Oliveira, a 7-year-old Brazilian girl who found 7 asteroids, has been named the world's youngest astronomer. Nicole's fascination with space and astronomy began when she was just 2 years old. She took part in the Asteroid Hunt Citizen Science Program, which is run by the International Astronomical Search Collaboration and includes NASA. Oliveira's passion for astronomy developed by leaps and bounds, according to R7, a Brazilian news agency. She asked her mother for a star when she was 2 years old. She made do with a toy star at the time, but it wasn't until later that she discovered what her kid really needed. Oliveira was recently asked to speak at the Brazilian Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation's first international seminar on astronomy and aeronautics. Oliveira is used to presenting lectures in schools in her hometown of Maceió, despite her age. They invited her after learning that Oliveira is the youngest member of the Alagoas Astronomical Studies Center. Barbara Boxer, a former United States Senator, was robbed and abused in Oakland, California, on Monday. The incident occurred Monday morning in the waterfront Jack London Square district, according to a statement posted on the 80-year Twitter Olds account. Boxer was pushed from behind in her back by her attacker. The assailant then got in a waiting car with her belongings. Earlier today, former Senator Barbara Boxer was assaulted in the Jack London Square neighborhood of Oakland. The assailant pushed her in the back, stole her cell phone and jumped in a waiting car. She is thankful that she was not seriously injured, her tweet read. Boxer said fortunately she didn't fall. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I was glad I was on my feet. She walked to a nearby Verizon store to get help. The case is being investigated by Oakland police. Furthermore, Crime Stoppers of Oakland is offering a reward of up to $2,000 for information leading to an arrest.
Even as the trip details are not yet finalized, Vice President Kamala Harris may visit Vietnam and Singapore in coming August, a Reuters report said, citing a source familiar with the matter. Harris' agenda of the travel is highly likely to be the coronavirus pandemic, said the source on condition of anonymity. Earlier, Vice President Kamala Harris visited a Border Patrol facility near the U.S.-Mexico border and urged a focus on children and practical solutions to migration, in a trip meant to blunt Republican criticism of White House immigration policies. The visit, her first since becoming vice president 5 months ago, came amid a rise in migrants caught crossing the border, which has sparked outrage from Republicans, who favor the stricter immigration policies implemented by former President Donald Trump. President Joe Biden, a Democrat, tasked Harris with spearheading his administration's handling of the broader issue of people fleeing Central American countries for the United States. She visited Guatemala and Mexico earlier this month. This issue cannot be reduced to a political issue. We're talking about children, we're talking about families, we're talking about suffering. And our approach has to be thoughtful and effective, Harris said at the conclusion of her short trip. Thousands of people returned to the streets on Saturday to stage a fourth round of protests calling the impeachment of Brazil's far-right president Jair Bolsonaro. Demands for Bolsonaro's removal were triggered by the government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and accusations of corruption in vaccine purchases. A Senate committee is investigating the government's overall pandemic response. At the same time, the Supreme Court has authorized a criminal investigation into the president for a deal to buy overpriced vaccines from India. Bolsonaro dismisses it as an opposition ploy to remove him from office. The decision about whether or not to proceed with Bolsonaro's impeachment is in the hands of Congress, but most observers say the president's future is likely to be decided by next year's election and not before.
Amid escalation in Taliban's offensive in Afghanistan, U.S. Marine General Kenneth McKenzie has said that the United States is prepared to continue this heightened level of support in the coming weeks if the Taliban continue their attacks. McKenzie asserted that the U.S. has increased airstrikes in support of Afghan forces over the last several days. President Biden had announced U.S. troops will pull out of Afghanistan by August 31, even as the Taliban renewed its offensive in the past month, seizing areas in border regions including in the west and north. The government of Afghanistan faces a stern test in the days ahead. The Taliban are attempting to create a sense of inevitability about their campaign, McKenzie said. The Taliban has increasingly targeted provincial capitals and rural districts in the country, including border checkpoints along Tajikistan, Pakistan, and Iran. They are going to have to deal with the cities if they want to try and claw their way back into power, he said. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they are going to be able to capture these urban areas, U.S. General McKenzie said. However, it is unclear whether the U.S. will continue airstrikes beyond August 31 when the last U.S. troops leave the country. A strong tropical storm is approaching Japan and is expected to make landfall on Tuesday, Japan's meteorological agency said. Tropical storm Nepartak, with a wind speed of 108 km per hour, has forced the organizers of Tokyo Olympics 2020 to change rowing and archery events. In line with the current weather forecast, the schedule for the rowing and archery events due to take place on the 27th have already been changed, Tokyo 2020 said. At this time, there are no plans to change the schedule for any of the other events due to be held on Tuesday. Nepartak is shifting its course from the Tokyo area to northeastern regions, including Fukushima.
Researchers from one of Sri Lanka's leading universities, the Sri Jayawardenepura University, have found that China's Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccine is highly efficient against the Delta variant, which has become the dominant variant across the world. This vaccine was found very effective for the Delta variant as well. The antibody responses to Delta variant and neutralizing antibodies were similar to levels seen following natural infection, the university said on its website on Monday. According to the study, 95% of individuals who received 2 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine have developed antibodies similar to a naturally infected COVID-19 person. The study showed that 2 doses of Sinopharm vaccine produced neutralizing antibodies in 81.25% of recipients, and that these antibody levels were similar to what would occur after surviving a natural infection of COVID-19. The research team included Sri Lankan scientist Professor Nihalika Malavij, head of the Immunology and Molecular Medicine Department of the Sri Jayawardenapura University, her colleague Dr. Chandama Jiwandara, and Oxford University researchers Professors Graham Ogg and Alan Townsend. Malavij told Xinhua that Sinopharm is the most used vaccine being rolled out in Sri Lanka presently due to the availability of stocks in the country. To date, 4.63 million people in Sri Lanka have received the first dose of the Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccine, and 1.29 million others had received the second dose of the vaccine. No single severe side effect case relevant to the vaccine has been reported. Malavij said the study is the first of its kind to be published in the world, and experts looked at every possible angle of the immune system from the Sinopharm jab. The vaccine was also compared to the alpha and beta variants of the virus as well as the original virus. The conclusion of this report is that when it comes to Delta and other variants, the Sinopharm vaccine induces similar levels of antibody responses as people who have naturally been infected, which is very good, Malavij said.
An accident and the civic-mindedness of some commercial divers have led to the discovery of 2 centuries-old shipwrecks in Singapore's territorial waters, one of which is the first-ever ancient shipwreck to be found near the island nation. The 2 wrecks dating back to the early 14th century and late 18th century were found near the outlying island of Pedra Branca, 54 kilometers off the mainland of Singapore. The area around Pedra Branca is extremely dangerous to navigate, as it is dotted with treacherous rocks and reefs coupled with shallow waters. In December 2014, a Singapore-registered barge ran aground at Pedra Branca due to bad weather. The barge was carrying 2 cranes that were in danger of toppling onto the island's historic Horsburgh lighthouse. To protect the lighthouse, the cranes had to be blown up, and divers were sent to clear the debris. While they were looking for steel parts, they found ceramics instead, explained Michael Flecker, Ph.D., a visiting fellow and project director for maritime archaeology projects at the Aziz Yusof Ishaq Institute. They came to us with a series of plates. They were Lonquin greenware, which could have dated 14th century, maybe early 15th. It was very civic-minded of them. Had they not done that, the whole site could have been looted. We may never have found out. Initially, Flecker and his team weren't sure whether the divers had found a whole wreck or just a series of plates jettisoned from an ancient ship. We did a survey, and having got to the seabed instead of just 1 or 2 pieces that could have been wedged amongst the rocks, we actually saw the whole seabed was carpeted in ceramic shards. We also noted that it was not just the greenware, there was also some blue and white, and the yuan blue and white is very rare, so that was exciting, said Flecker. In 2016, Singapore's National Heritage Board, NHB, commissioned Flecker's department at the Aziz Yusof Ishaq Institute to begin excavation work at the site of Shipwreck 1. We could only go out 1 week at a time because of the currents, and on Shipwreck 1, we did 10 trips of 1 week each and excavated quite an extensive area, said Flecker. Want to build a website or an e-commerce store? Scci Website Builder is the solution. Scci Website Builder help you to easily build a professional website with a low cost. There is also SEO and marketing functions to promote your website. What if you face an issue? Our customer support will be there to help you. Wait no more, contact us to get your trial account and start creating your website. Need help to reach out to more customers? Want to increase your sales revenue? Singapore Chamber of Commerce and Industry can help you with your advertising needs through Facebook and Google marketing, YouTube and TikTok campaigns advertising, sales video production, live stream sales, Website building and e-commerce advertising. Reach more customers and get more sales now. Make an appointment now through WhatsApp or click on the link below.
A number of students and staff members have been testing positive for COVID-19 in tandem with the increase in community cases in the past weeks, said the Ministry of Education, MOE, on Monday, July 26. At Raffles Girls Primary School, where a Primary 1 student has tested positive for COVID-19, the entire school conducted home-based learning on Monday. According to a circular sent to parents seen by CNA, school will resume on Tuesday for Primary 2 to 6 students. The circular did not indicate when Primary 1 students will return to school. Various media outlets have reported COVID-19 cases in several other primary schools and at least one secondary school. CNA has asked Mo for confirmation of this. In response to earlier queries by CNA, and Mo's spokesperson said, in tandem with the increase in community cases in the past weeks, we have also seen a number of students and staff testing positive for COVID-19. Raffles Medical Group first half profit doubles on back of COVID-19 jabs, tests. Raffles Medical Group more than doubled its first half net profit thanks to sales from COVID-19 vaccinations and testing, said the group on Monday, July 26. Net profit came in at 39.4 million Singapore dollars in the first half of 2021 versus the 17.2 million Singapore dollars during the same period last year. As of Monday at 11:59 a.m., shares of Raffles Medical were up 10 cents or 8.3%. In Singapore, the group continues to support the government's COVID-19 initiatives, said Raffles Medical Group in a media release. The group's revenue also jumped 42.4% to 343.8 million Singapore dollars in the first half of this year compared to the 241.4 million Singapore dollars in the same period last year. In its release, Raffles Medical Group said it set up and operated 17 vaccination centers across Singapore. As the new Delta strain emerged, the group again stepped up to support the government in its efforts to root out COVID-19 clusters through extensive community testing PCR swab tests at its PCR test centers, it added. The United States Air Force is sending more than 24 F-22 stealth fighters to an exercise in the Western Pacific this month, an unusually large deployment of the powerful jets that analysts say sends a strong message to a possible adversary in China. Pacific Air Forces in Hawaii this week said approximately 25 F-22s Raptors from the Hawaii Air National Guard and from Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, Alaska, will deploy this month to Guam and Tinian Islands for Operation Pacific Iron 2021. We have never had this many Raptors deployed together in the Pacific Air Force's area of operations, General Ken Wilsbach, Pacific Air Forces commander, told CNN. The F-22s are fifth-generation combat jets, the world's most advanced fighter aircraft, incorporating stealth technologies and connecting onboard sensor systems with off-board information systems to give their pilots a detailed view of the battle space. U.S. F-35s are another example. Deploying a large number of F-22s for the exercise sends an immediate message to China at a time when relations are tense over Pacific flashpoints like Taiwan and the South China Sea, said Carl Schuster, a Hawaii-based defense analyst, and a former director of operations at the U.S. Pacific Command's Joint Intelligence Center. Normal F-22 deployments consist of 6 to 12 aircraft, he said. The Pacific Air Force is demonstrating that it can deploy as many or more fifth-generation aircraft into the theater on short notice than China currently has in its entire inventory, he said. Police will investigate a strike staged by contract doctors at Hospital Kuala Lumpur, HKL, on Monday, July 26, Malaysian media reported. Dang Wangi Police Chief Mohammed Zainal Abdullah was quoted as saying that an investigation paper has been opened against the doctors for violating the restrictions against gathering amid COVID-19. Yes, "We will open an investigation paper since no person is allowed to gather or be involved in any gathering at any premises within any infected local area, whether for religious, wedding, sports, recreational, social or cultural purposes, without obtaining prior permission from the Director General of Health as stipulated under the regulation," he was quoted as saying by Malay Mail. A walkout dubbed Hartal Doctor contract took place on Monday morning at various hospitals across the country. The contract government medical officers had earlier issued an ultimatum to the government to address their concerns regarding the contract system. The lack of job security, limited length of service, and other terms and benefits were among their concerns. The contract scheme, which was first introduced by the Health Ministry in 2016, has been a major stumbling block in their career progression, according to the affected junior doctors. Under the Malaysian public healthcare system, doctors will first need to undergo a 2-year compulsory service period. To become a specialist, they would need to train for a further 4 years. With most contract doctors getting a 5-year tenure, they have found it challenging to complete their specialist training. Last Friday, Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin announced that the government will extend the contract of all contract medical officers, dental officers and pharmaceutical officers for 2 years upon completion of their mandatory service, as part of the immediate actions to address their concerns. He said that the contracts of those accepted for further study and specialization will also be extended, in order to ensure that they can complete their specialization training. However, the contract doctors decided to proceed with the Monday strike as they were of the view that their job security concerns would not be solved with the contract extension. Permanent posts for all contract medical and other healthcare officers must be given instead, a statement posted on Hartak Doctor Contract's Facebook page on Saturday read. On Monday, groups of medical officers reportedly walked out of medical facilities across the country amid police presence. Most of their placards read, "I am a contract doctor, we are your future specialists," or the campaign hashtag. About 50 doctors gathered in support of the strike at HKL, according to the Malaysian Insight. The group dispersed about 25 minutes later. On Sunday night, Health Ministry Director General Noor Hisham Abdullah had urged the contract doctors not to participate in the strike and abandon their duty to the patients, saying that such a move will run counter to the physician's oath of primum non nocere, first, do no harm. "Remember, many lives are on the line and the demonstration could affect their lives and even your career," he said. "I wish to remind all that patient safety is our priority. Remember the oath we took sincerely and be there for your patients at the time when they and country needed you the most. We are the last bastion of defense to make a difference to our patients, and every life matters," he added. Tunisia's president fires prime minister, dismisses government, freezes parliament. Tunisian President Kais Saied dismissed the country's prime minister and froze parliament for 30 days on Sunday, posing a major test to the young democracy and escalating a political crisis that has built for months. Opponents condemned the move as an attempted coup. Saied announced he was firing Prime Minister Hicham Mikici and that he and a new prime minister, to be named in the coming hours, would take up executive authority. Under Tunisia's 2014 constitution, executive power is shared by the president, prime minister, and the parliament. Saied also suspended lawmakers' parliamentary immunity. "We have taken these decisions until social peace returns to Tunisia and until we save the state," he said in a televised speech after an emergency meeting with security leaders. The moves came on Tunisia's Republic Day, traditionally a day of celebration and protest across the North African country. This year, amid a floundering economy, a devastating coronavirus surge, and widespread anger at the government, it was marked by displays of public rage. Biden says remains to be seen if immigration measure part of wider budget bill. U.S. President Joe Biden on Sunday said he remained adamant about the need to create a pathway for U.S. citizenship for so-called dreamer immigrants, but it remains to be seen if that will be part of a $3.5 trillion budget measure. "There must be a pathway to citizenship," Biden told reporters as he returned to the White House after spending the weekend at his home in Wilmington, Delaware. Dreamers are immigrants brought to the United States as children who are protected from deportation under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals (DACA) program. Democrats hope to provide legal status to some immigrants in the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation measure they plan to pass with a simple majority, but details have not been released. Asked if the reconciliation measure needed to include the pathway to citizenship, Biden said that remains to be seen.
Singapore first integrated social and business platform is here. Chat online marketplace. Everyone is chatting in chat. Connect with new friends around the world. Sharing opportunities and moments. Know what happened around the world. No more prank calls or targeted advertisements. Your personal data privacy is protected against for marketing. Download Chat Online Marketplace now. Singapore first integrated social and business platform. Available in Apple stores and Play Store. Need help to reach out to more customers? Want to increase your sales revenue? Singapore Chamber of Commerce and Industry can help you with your advertising needs through Facebook and Google marketing, YouTube and TikTok campaigns advertising, sales video production, live stream sales, website building and e-commerce advertising. Reach more customers and get more sales now. Make an appointment now through WhatsApp or click on the link below.
U.S. prepared to continue airstrikes against Taliban, top commander says. The United States has accelerated its air campaign against the Taliban in the closing weeks of its military mission in Afghanistan, and is prepared to continue if the militants stay on the offensive, the top commander of U.S. forces here said Sunday. U.S. forces bombarded Taliban positions in at least 4 airstrikes last week, including in the southern province of Kandahar, the birthplace of the Taliban. Militants have besieged and now control some parts of the provincial capital, along with about half of the country's district centers, defense officials have said. Marine General Kenneth Frank McKenzie, head of U.S. Central Command, who assumed responsibility for U.S. operations in Afghanistan this month, told reporters Sunday that the number of airstrikes have increased as the Taliban takes more territory. We are prepared to continue this heightened level of support in the coming weeks, if the Taliban continue their attacks, McKenzie said. We're taking airstrikes as we need to take them. Some of the strikes came during close fighting between Afghan troops and the Taliban, he said. Recent strikes have come at the request of Afghan forces, including to destroy stolen vehicles and artillery, defense officials have said. Nearly 2/3 of women in the UK military have experienced bullying, sexual harassment and discrimination during their career, a landmark parliamentary report revealed on Sunday. The UK Defence Subcommittee, which described its inquiry into the treatment of women in the military as one of the most important in its history, said that 62% of respondents said they had experienced some form of bullying, harassment or discrimination while serving. More than 4,100 women testified for the report, including staff and veterans. The testimonies, given in confidential and public evidence, include gang rape, sexual assault by drugs, sexual exploitation of under-18s and trophies or contests to bag the women on camp or on ships. Some women also claimed they were bullied for refusing sexual advances and witnessed groups of men attacking their friends but were too afraid to report it. The military has come a long way in recent years. However, it is clear to us that the military is, in many ways, a man's world, Sarah Atherton, chair of the Subcommittee on Women in the Armed Forces, said in a statement. She added that the complaint system, as it stands, is woefully inadequate and leaves most feeling unable to come forward. Atherton also said that while many commanding officers want to do the right thing, female staff are being let down by the chain of command, explaining that there had been accusations of senior officers sweeping complaints under the rug to protect their own reputations and careers. Drawing from the report, Atherton suggests that the serious sexual offenses should not be tried in a military court, given that conviction rates are 4 to 6 times lower than a normal court. She said that servicewomen are being denied justice. The report is the first of its kind, with the Ministry of Defense lifting the usual restrictions that prevent service personnel from contributing to parliamentary inquiries. Following the report's publication, the MOD said in a post on Twitter, "Bullying and harassment is entirely unacceptable within the armed forces, and we are committed to eliminating all inappropriate behaviors." Despite their testimonies, 9 out of 10 female service staff would still recommend a career in the military, Atherton said. Now that the issues for military women have been exposed, it is time we started to protect those who protect us and make changes that better our armed forces, for all who serve, she said. China blames U.S. for stalemate in relations, as talks begin. China blamed the U.S. for what it called a stalemate in bilateral relations as high-level face-to-face talks began Monday in the Chinese city of Tianjin. Vice Foreign Minister Xie Feng urged the U.S. to change its highly misguided mindset and dangerous policy, the official Xinhua news agency reported. The China-U.S. relationship is in a stalemate because some Americans portray China as an imagined enemy, Xinhua quoted Xie as telling U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman. America's number 2 diplomat is discussing the fraught relationship between the countries in separate meetings with Xie, who is in charge of U.S.-China relations, and Foreign Minister Wang Yi at a closed-off resort hotel in the city of Tianjin. Sherman is the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit China since President Joe Biden took office 6 months ago. Relations between the countries deteriorated sharply under his predecessor, Donald Trump, and the two sides remain at odds over a host of issues including technology, cybersecurity, human rights and other issues. In an interview Saturday, Wang accused the U.S. of adopting a superior attitude and using its strength to pressure other countries. China would never accept any country that claims to be superior to others, he told China's Phoenix Television. If the U.S. has not learned to treat other countries equally, China and the international community have the responsibility to help the U.S. learn how to do this. Biden administration officials have said the goal of the talks is not to negotiate specific issues but to keep high-level communications channels open. The U.S. wants to ensure that guardrails are in place to prevent competition between the countries from becoming conflict, they said. A possible meeting between Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to be on the agenda, possibly on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rome at the end of October. Outrage at Nigeria's brazen bandit attacks. In our series of letters from African journalists, Manir Danali, former editor-in-chief of Nigeria's Daily Trust newspaper, says the shooting down of a military jet shows how organized crime is becoming more daring by the day. Nigerians refer to them as bandits, a word that does not quite do justice to what are in fact networks of sophisticated criminals who operate across large swathes of northern, western, and central Nigeria. Gangs on motorbikes terrorize the region, stealing animals, kidnapping for ransom, killing anyone who dares confront them, and taxing farmers. It's a huge money-making operation. Over the last 4 years, the security forces have not been able to get a handle on the situation, which millions of Nigerians feel is out of control. Last week, President Muhammadu Buhari inaugurated the Duzima Zaskia Road in his home state of Katsina, but few people dare travel on it after countless attacks. A serving army general was recently killed on the main road from Abuja to central Kogi state, and his sister, who had been traveling with him, was kidnapped. This week, 13 military police were killed in an ambush in Zamfara state when at the same time at least 150 villagers were abducted. At the moment, at least 300 students are being held by kidnappers who seized them from their schools in Kaduna, Niger and Kebbi states at different times over the last 2 months, many taken in broad daylight. Some are Islamic primary school students as young as 5, and most of them, if the kidnappers are to be believed, have fallen sick. In all these cases, The gangs are asking for huge amounts of money to release the children, ransoms the parents cannot afford, while the authorities insist that they will neither pay ransoms nor negotiate with criminals. The kidnappers, whose hideouts are in vast camps and forests, are brazen. As they hold out for payment, they hassle parents with demands for bags of rice, beans, and cooking oil to feed their captives. Dozens of schools spread across at least 5 northern states have been closed by the authorities as they are unable to protect them.
Singapore first integrated social and business platform is here. Chat online marketplace. Everyone is chatting in chat. Connect with new friends around the world. Sharing opportunities and moments. Know what happened around the world. No more prank calls or targeted advertisements. Your personal data privacy is protected against remarketing. Download Chat Online Marketplace now. Singapore first integrated social and business platform. Available in Apple stores and Play Store.
Australians may face longer lockdown after reckless mass protests. Australia's New South Wales logged its second highest daily increase of the year in locally acquired COVID-19 cases on Sunday amid fears of a wave of new infections after thousands of people joined an anti-lockdown protest. In relation to yesterday's protests, can I say how absolutely disgusted I was? It broke my heart, Gladys Berejiklian, the premier of the country's most populous state, told reporters. I hope it won't be a setback, but it could be, she said. There were 141 COVID-19 cases reported, down from 163 a day earlier. The outbreak, which began in June, is being driven by the highly contagious Delta variant of the virus, and has now infected 2,081 people in New South Wales. There are 43 people in intensive care, up from 37 a day earlier. Under fire for a slow vaccine rollout, Prime Minister Scott Morrison said more vaccine supply was not going to ensure New South Wales gets out of lockdown, but what was needed was an effective, properly enforced lockdown. Let me be clear, there's not an alternative to the lockdown in New South Wales to get this under control. There is no other magic bullet that's going to do that, Morrison told reporters at a televised media conference. He called the anti-lockdown protests in Sydney reckless and self-defeating. While Berejiklian and other state leaders have blamed Canberra for the slow vaccine rollout, critics have said NSW did not enforce its stay-at-home orders, which has led to Delta variant leaks to other states. At least 38 of the new cases in NSW had spent time in the community while infectious, state health authorities said. Numbers of such cases have stayed stubbornly high even after 4 weeks of lockdown in Sydney, now expected to be extended beyond July 30th. The state reported 2 deaths overnight, including a woman in her 30s with no pre-existing conditions. Despite its struggle with spikes of infections, Australia has managed to keep its epidemic largely under control with a total of about 32,600 cases and 918 deaths. "46 of 117 new local COVID-19 cases linked to Jurong Fishery Port Cluster." The Ministry of Health on Sunday, 25th of July, reported the detection of 125 new cases of COVID-19 infection in Singapore, taking the country's total case count to 64,179. There are 117 new locally transmitted infections in the community, of which 46 are linked to the Jurong Fishery Port Cluster and 5 are linked to the KTV cluster, said Mo in a news release. The latest figures take the case counts for the two clusters to 787 and 237, respectively. Of the new local cases, 43 are linked to past cases and have already been quarantined, while 36 are linked to previous cases and were detected through surveillance. Another 38 cases are unlinked. There are also 2 infections among seniors above the age of 70, who are unvaccinated or partially vaccinated, and are at risk of serious illness. Also detected were 8 imported cases, who have already been placed on stay-home notice, SHN, or isolated upon their arrival in Singapore. 4 was detected upon arrival, while the other 4 developed the illness during SHN or isolation. In its nightly update on Saturday, Mo said that an 83-year-old Singaporean woman had died of COVID-19 infection. The woman, who was unvaccinated and had a history of hypertension and high cholesterol, was linked to the 121 Bukit Merah View cluster, which has 94 cases to date. To date, 37 people in Singapore have died of COVID-19 from the coronavirus. Standard Bank robber will not be caned in line with UK's Singapore extradition deal. Canadian national David James Roach, who committed the 2016 robbery of a Standard Chartered Bank branch in Singapore, will not be caned as part of his sentence. In a media release on Sunday, 25th of July, the Ministry of Home Affairs, MHA, said that the sentence was remitted as of Saturday. The move is in line with a pre-existing agreement that guaranteed the 31-year-old would not be subject to corporal punishment in Singapore after he was extradited here from the UK in March last year. It was necessary for the Singapore government to provide this assurance to the UK government, or the UK would not have permitted the extradition. Extraditing Roach to Singapore to face justice for his crimes was our top priority, said MHA. On the advice of Singapore's cabinet, the remittance was granted by President Halimah Yacob using her powers under Article 22(p)(1) of the Constitution. MHA noted that the Singapore government has thus fulfilled the assurance given to the UK government, and that no alternative punishment would be imposed on Roach in lieu of the remitted caning sentence. Roach robbed a Standard Chartered Bank branch at Holland Village of $30,000 on July 7, 2016. He fled to Thailand the next day and was later arrested at a hostel in Bangkok. As Singapore does not have an extradition treaty with Thailand, he was deported to the United Kingdom and arrived in London on January 11, 2018. Roach was finally extradited from the UK and arrived in Singapore on 17 March last year to face robbery and money laundering charges. On 7 July this year he pleaded guilty at the state courts to 1 count of robbery and 1 count of money laundering, and was sentenced to 5 years jail along with 6 strokes of the cane. And waves of plastic show Sri Lankan ship disaster's deep ramifications. For almost 2 weeks, a thick, black smudge stained the sky off Sri Lanka's western coast, smoke from a burning container ship 9 nautical miles out to sea. The Singapore-flagged Express Pearl caught fire on May 20 en route to Colombo carrying 350 metric tons of oil in its tanks and at least 81 containers of dangerous goods, including nitric acid, a highly toxic chemical used to make fertilizers. As the Sri Lankan Navy and Coast Guard teams fought to douse the flames, the inferno tore through the ship's cargo, releasing a cocktail of hazardous chemicals into the air and sea, prompting authorities to issue a toxic rain alert, and compounding fears of an oil spill. The fire released 80 tons of plastic pellets, raw materials used to make plastic products, into the ocean, blanketing beaches along Sri Lanka's western coast. The environmental impact was immediately clear. Plastic pellets became lodged in fish's gills and mouths. And dozens of rare sea turtles washed up on Sri Lanka's beaches, some with what appeared to be scorch marks on their shells. Fish, dolphins, and even a whale were found dead. As of late June, about 200 carcasses had been counted. 2 months on, billions of plastic particles have washed up on nearly every shore of the island and are expected to disperse throughout the Indian Ocean. Fishing communities have been heavily impacted, and locals fear it will take years for the island to recover from what environmentalists have called the worst disaster in Sri Lanka's history. China debuts train prototype that can hit speeds of 620 km per hour. China has revealed a prototype for a new high-speed maglev train that is capable of reaching speeds of 620 km, 385 miles, per hour. The train runs on high-temperature superconducting (HTS) power that makes it look as if the train is floating along the magnetized tracks. The sleek 21-meter-long, 69 feet, prototype was unveiled to media in the city of Chengdu, Sichuan Province, on January 13. In addition, university researchers constructed 165 meters, 541 feet, of track to demonstrate how the train would look and feel in transit, according to state-run Xinhua News. China is home to the world's largest high-speed rail network, which stretches over 37,000 kilometers, and the fastest commercially operating train, the Shanghai Maglev. The country's first high-speed maglev train, it began operating in 2003. Running at a top speed of 431 kilometers per hour, the train links Shanghai Pudong Airport and Longyang Road in the eastern side of Shanghai. China has been eager to make further infrastructure improvements ahead of the 2022 Winter Olympics, which will take place in Beijing.
Singapore's first integrated social and business platform is here. Chat online marketplace. Everyone is chatting in chat. Connect with new friends around the world. Sharing opportunities and moments. Know what happened around the world. No more prank calls or targeted advertisements. Your personal data privacy is protected against remarketing. Download Chat Online Marketplace now. Singapore first integrated social and business platform. Available in Apple stores and Play Store. Want to build a website or an e-commerce store? Scci Website Builder is the solution. Scci Website Builder help you to easily